At an international airport filled with white lights and the sound of departure announcements, Jungkook and Taehyung's steps slowly merge with the flow of other passengers who were both preparing to go home. But their presence brought a different atmosphere. No excessive crowding, no flashy gestures. What is seen is a rare calm, as if these two figures are closing a chapter of a long journey before returning to Korea. Both arrived earlier than scheduled. Jungkook wore casual clothes with a dark hoodie and a low-pulled hat, while Taehyung appeared in a relaxed but still charismatic style, sunglasses partially obscuring his facial expression. Even so, their body language speaks volumes. Jungkook turned around several times, making sure everything was going smoothly, while Taehyung stepped in a calm rhythm, his hand occasionally going into his jacket pocket. Before entering the check-in area, the two had stopped for a moment, not for the camera, nor for the fans, but to exchange a few short words with each other. No one could hear the contents of the conversation, but their expressions revealed something deeper than just small talk. There was fatigue left over from previous trips and activities, but there was also a sense of relief, as if they had finally reached the point where home became the most awaited word. The airport that morning was quieter than usual. Some fans who recognized them chose to keep their distance, just looking with sparkling eyes without shouting. This moment feels both fragile and precious. Jungkook and Taehyung walked side by side, unhurried, as if to prolong the last seconds before returning to the routine in the country. Sources on the scene said that the mood of both seemed stable and calm. There were no signs of tension, nor excessive euphoria. Jungkook is seen occasionally smiling a little when Taehyung says something, a smile that is not made for the public, but rather a natural reflex of mutual comfort. Taehyung himself seemed to observe more around, his eyes following the passing of other passengers, as if absorbing the atmosphere before leaving. Before handing over the travel documents, Jungkook had time to double-check the bag he was carrying. Small gestures, but full of habits, reflect his perfectionist side. Taehyung stood aside, waiting unhurriedly, occasionally leaning over to look at Jungkook's phone screen. Their interaction felt very personal, far from the formal impression that is often seen at official events. This moment comes amid much speculation and public scrutiny of their activities in recent times. But at the airport, it all seemed to be laid temporarily. No serious discussions are visible. No heavy expressions reflect pressure. There are only two people who are preparing to go home after completing a long journey, bringing home experiences, fatigue, and perhaps also feelings that have not yet been completely unraveled that a few minutes before heading to the security check. Taehyung steps a little ahead, then stops when he realizes Jungkook is a few steps behind. He turned his head, waiting, a small gesture that did not go unnoticed. Jungkook quickened his pace, and the two were back in alignment. This simple moment creates a strong sense of togetherness, without the need for excessive touching or words. Many fans see this moment before departure as symbolic, not about the luxury of travel or an international itinerary, but rather about the meaning of coming home. Korea is not just their next destination, but a safe space where they can get back to being themselves, away from the constant spotlight. Jungkook and Taehyung's calm expressions seem to reinforce that in the waiting area before boarding. The two chose to sit close together. Jungkook looked down at his phone, perhaps replying to his last message or checking his schedule, while Taehyung leaned back casually, his head tilted slightly, his eyes closed for a few seconds. The silence between them was not awkward. Quite the opposite, it feels familiar, like two best friends who don't need to keep talking to feel connected. Every now and then, Jungkook shows Taehyung something on his phone screen. Taehyung's reaction was simple, just a small nod and a slight smile. No loud laughter, no overreaction. All felt soft, as if they were deliberately preserving energy before a long flight. Even the way they sit reveals honest fatigue, not fatigue hidden behind a public image. Boarding time is approaching. An announcement sounded, and passengers began to line up. Jungkook and Taehyung stood almost at the same time. Jungkook tidies up his hat. Taehyung lifts his bag in a relaxed motion. No big waves, no dramatic gestures. They just walk towards the line, the pace steady and calm. For many fans, This moment before boarding the plane seemed the most emotional. No stage, no cheers, just a silent transition from one trip to the next. Jungkook and Taehyung look like two people who understand very well that travel is not only about the place to go, but also about the process of returning. When they finally approached the departure gate, the atmosphere remained calm. Jungkook turned once more around, not to look for the camera, but rather to make sure everything was in order. Taehyung stepped beside him, his expression flat but peaceful. In a few minutes, they will be on the plane, leaving the airport and flying to Korea. But before actually entering, there's a short pause. A deep breath, a slow pace, then continued walking. The moment, although brief, felt full of meaning. A travel cover that doesn't need words, just presence and togetherness. Jungkook and Taehyung head on a plane home to Korea, carrying a story that may never be told in person, but feels real to anyone who witnesses it. Their steps are getting closer and closer to the final scanning area, a place where each passenger must prepare to completely part with the public space. At this point, Jungkook can be seen slightly straightening his shoulders, as if gathering the rest of the focus before entering the long flight. Taehyung walked half a step beside him, neither ahead nor behind. The two seemed to be in the same rhythm, an alignment formed not by chance, but by the habit of walking together over the years. Around them, the atmosphere remains restrained. There's no pressing crowd, no screaming that breaks concentration. Several pairs of eyes followed from a distance, but everything went on in an orderly manner. This moment feels like an unwritten agreement between the idol and the public, to give space, to respect fatigue, and to let the homecoming take place in peace. Before handing over the boarding pass, Jungkook glanced at Taehyung and nodded slightly. Short gestures, almost imperceptible, yet sufficient to indicate wordless communication. Taehyung replied with the same expression. Calm, simple. There was no long conversation, as if they had already understood each other what needed to be understood at that moment. The seconds before entering the departure hall seemed to slow down. The sound of the announcement echoed softly. The wheels of the suitcase rubbed on the floor, footsteps passed by. Jungkook and Taehyung stand for a while in line, waiting for their turn. Jungkook tidies up his bag straps. Taehyung adjusts his jacket, a small gesture that shows readiness, not just to fly, but to return to the routine that awaits in Korea. Many interpret their calm as a sign of relief. Dense travel, constant highlights, and distance from home finally hit pause. This return is not just a change of location, but an emotional transition from the outside to the inside, from the public to a more personal space. When their turn came, the two stepped almost simultaneously. No dramatic pauses, no long gazes back, just a steady step towards the hallway, as if they chose to keep this moment as their own. In the waking silence, Jungkook and Taehyung leave the airport, bringing home fatigue, calmness, and a travel story completed in the simplest way: home.